What is going on, everyone? Congratulations on making it through another long offseason waiting for the NFL to arrive. Today is kickoff day, and today is predictions day. Today, we're going to predict every single team's record. We're going to do an awards show and, of course, show my playoff predictions and who I ultimately think wins the Super Bowl. Now, we did just finish my summer deep dive series yesterday, which means all 32 teams have over an hour up on this channel of me breaking down their strengths, weaknesses, what could go right, what could go wrong. And, you know, if maybe your team's predictions here in this video aren't as positive as you like to see, I recognize that these predictions won't all be right, and there are other outcomes for these teams out there. Or if you just want to hear more about why I think some of the things I say in this video, you can check out my deep dives. So all the analysis has been laid out on the table. Today, we're going to have some fun, more of my, if I had to bet on these teams, this is how I think the season will play out. Let's get into it, starting in the NFC North. And I do have the Bears finishing in fourth place. The biggest of concerns here is this defense is by far the worst unit of any team in this division. I think they're still going to really struggle on that side of the ball. But then it also comes down to Justin Fields, right? Basically, flip a coin. Does his development land on the positive side, or is it more closer to what we historically see from bad passing quarterbacks, which Justin Fields was last year? That's going to be a big variable there, but I do have the Bears finishing in last place. Then I actually have the Detroit Lions in third, though we'll see just barely in third place in a second, but with a solid but underwhelming 8-9 season. Another team whose defense I don't fully believe in. I think we've just assumed that it's a good group for some reason as a football people, and they were bad last year, and I don't love a lot of the things they did. One of their big additions, Emmanuel Mosley in that secondary, already banged up for them. But offensively as well, they're really counting on Jameson Williams to open up the vertical passing game. I mean, he's going to miss the first 6 games of the year, and then it's a question of, is he actually a good NFL deep threat? We don't know yet. He's got 1 career catch. Not to mention this idea that a running back is going to be this incredibly dynamic weapon for Detroit and Jahmyr Gibbs. Very wait and see on that. So I just don't quite buy all of the hype into Detroit. I think they have a really high floor, but don't quite see the ceiling on this team. Then I've got Green Bay finishing in second place at 9-8. I do think this defense, despite Joe Barry, is still going to be really good. There's just so much talent on this team, and gotta love that Rashawn Gary is making a full recovery, trying to get that Nick Bosa money, which, holy crap, $34 million? Yeah, Rashawn Gary has a chance to get something close to that. I think he's going to have a pretty damn good season. Offensively as well, there's going to be some rough weeks, some good weeks, but I've always been a big Jordan Love believer. He's got one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, good play caller, explosive young receivers. I think this is going to be a better team than a lot of people think. Then we got the Minnesota Vikings finishing in first place at 9-8. I do think their offense is the best unit in this division, which is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting here. But defensively, they were bad last year too, right? And now you lose some roster talent, but actually have a real defensive coordinator. I wouldn't be surprised if this defense was better than they were last year. So there's your NFC North, a very tight race that comes down to basically tiebreakers in the last couple weeks of the season. Before we get to our next division, a lot of you guys asked throughout my deep dive series how I had time to get through the full series, and honestly, I got to shout out Factor, man. Factor is a game-changing product for a healthy and busy lifestyle. With Factor, you can skip that extra trip to the grocery store, the chopping, the prepping, and the cleaning, while still getting the full nutritional value and flavor that you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are shipped right to your house and are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy. These meals are fresh, delicious, and honestly just better than anything I can cook on my own. They're also very diet friendly. Whether you're trying to bulk up or slim down, they have calorie friendly options, roughly 550 calories per serving, or they have protein packed options as well, with 30 plus grams of protein per meal. And now Factor has partnered with me to support my channel and help you get 50% off your first full box of meals. So head to factor75.com or just click the link down below and use promo code TFG50 and you'll get 50% off your first box. and let's get back to it. But let's get to the NFC East. In last place, I have the Washington Commanders, another team that's going to be very interesting, similar to like the Bears, where it really just comes down to what Sam Howell is. And we really just don't know. This is kind of uncharted territory with a 5th-round pick who started one game, coming in as the day one starter with a great roster around him. It just comes down to coaching and quarterback. And I'm just not necessarily buying in, but this is one of those teams that could easily get me to buy in as early as, week 3, week 4, and make me look foolish for this prediction. But I've got them at 6-11. Third place, I've got the New York Giants finishing at 9-8. Genuinely one of the best coached teams in the NFL, and this time around they have real roster talent. So even if the schedule is harder this year, I think they're more well equipped to project to win some of those difficult games. Still some holes, still some questions with their ceiling, but I do think they're a really good football team. Then I have the Philadelphia Eagles finishing in 2nd place. This is more of a gut feeling type of thing. I look at the injury luck that they had last year, and I'm going to kind of bet against that to happen again, particularly with like their offensive line and secondary, where they had this miraculous run of health, where they have some more veteran players. If some guys like Lane Johnson, Kelsey, Slay, Bradbury actually miss games this year, I think that's going to be a massive drop-off for what is an otherwise incredible roster. Also with the wide receiver depth, they've only rostered 4 wide receivers. Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown played all 20 games for the Eagles last year. What does Jalen Hurts look like without one of those guys out there? Still a great season, still 11-6, but I have the Dallas Cowboys at 12-5 in first place in the NFC East. This Cowboys team might have the highest floor out of any team in the entire NFL. Just not a lot of question marks there. Do they have a quarterback that can go on a deep playoff run, however, and a coach that can outcoach other top coaches in the NFL come playoffs? That I will just leave towards the end of the video to find out. But let's do the NFC South. Quite easily, in my opinion, the worst division in football. And finishing in last place in the worst division in football, I have the New Orleans Saints, the favorites for this division, though Tampa's not going to be too far behind them, also with a 6-11 record. Just comes down to tiebreakers there. But with New Orleans, I think this defense sees pretty significant drop-offs with that defensive line. They lost their entire unit, really. Davenport, the 2 D tackles. Cam Jordan's been regressing and is just another year older now. I'm really worried about the pass rush and how much that's going to hurt the players in the secondary to continue playing at the level that they've played at. And then Derek Carr, man, almost a wild card himself. We feel pretty good about what Derek Carr is as a quarterback, but he was genuinely horrible last year. Looked timid, looked scared, looked broken in a similar way to like Carson Wentz early in his kind of regression. So I'm just not buying the Saints, man. I think they've got way too many question marks and have really no business being the heavy favorites in this division. Then the Tampa Bay Bucks, like I said, also a 6-11 record. I think their floor is higher than maybe some people think. Like, I don't think this is a Caleb Williams team, for example. This defense should still be really tough under Todd Bowles and a ton of talent there. But really, offensive line questions and Baker Mayfield questions is going to lead to some frustrating games and some frustrating losses. Then I've got the Carolina Panthers finishing in second place at 8-9. I think this is going to be one of those teams that has some really good moments with Bryce Young and some really frustrating moments as they are still trying to kind of piece all of this together to be a real playoff team. But I like a lot of the pieces in place, and I believe in both the coaching and quarterback structure. Wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers edge out this division for first place. But I've got the Atlanta Falcons actually winning this division. Their schedule is incredibly easy. That helps, as is, all these teams have pretty easy schedules in this division, but Atlanta's, as I was clicking through all the games for this season, felt particularly easy. And I love the floor that their run game is going to give them and just their offense as a whole. I'm an Arthur Smith guy. I think this defense is going to be okay enough for them to basically scrap out 9 wins in the worst division in football and make the playoffs. Then the NFC West, Arizona Cardinals, gonna finish at 3-14 here. I do think Kyler comes in the second half of the year and makes things tough on this organization as far as, do they keep Kyler? Do they go with a guy like Caleb Williams in the draft? But this should be easily the worst defense in the NFL. I don't believe in Jonathan Gannon as a starting point, and then they have quite clearly the worst roster in the NFL. So we're expecting a rough year for Arizona. Then the Rams, another team we're kind of all expecting a rough year for. You know, honestly, if everybody manages to stay healthy, this could be a sneaky playoff team. And even in the NFC, they could have a playoff run with their experience and their star talent and their coaching. But Cooper Kupp's already banged up. I'm really just expecting Stafford to kind of wash out here. Maybe that makes me a pessimist, but if I had to bet on it, I just think this team might start okay, but then really trickle off as the year goes on. Then the Seattle Seahawks, a 10-7 finish. Really love this offense. Not a bad thing to say there. I do believe in Geno Smith, but defensively, I still have major questions about their front four and how much ultimately that could lower the ceiling of their defense. But a still, good 10-7 finish, a win more than they had last year, and they're going to be threats in the NFC. But as a wild card, because I have San Francisco winning this division, they lock up Nick Bosa. This team is ready to go, man. I think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder with how last season ended with the QB drama, the injuries in the finale. I know the Niners inside that building are very confident that they are the best team in the NFL, and I think they're going to come out and prove a lot of things this year. Arguably the best group of weapons in the NFL as a whole, arguably the best defense in the NFL, and I think convincingly the best offensive coordinator in the NFL with Kyle Shanahan. So definitely buying the Niners as I have in years past. It's played out well for me, and I'm going to stick with them. So your NFC playoff picture is going to be obviously those division winners. And then we have the Eagles with the 5 seed, the Seahawks with the 6 seed, and then as tiebreakers broke out, Green Bay edged out the Giants ever so slightly for the 7 spot. But in the AFC, let's start in the AFC North, a brutal division to try and win this one. I have 4th place, the Pittsburgh Steelers, at a 9-8 record. Mike Tomlin avoids that under 500 season, but it just is unfortunate that the Steelers couldn't be in the NFC North or the NFC South, because they might be an 11 or 12 win team in a different division. I really love how this defense is going to put the fear of God in opposing offenses, and I think this offense itself has a very nice floor with the playmakers and Kenny Pickett being a pretty solid player, but unfortunately a 9-8 finish for the Steelers, and it's not even really all their fault. The Cleveland Browns at 10-7. I do buy the Cleveland Browns. I think you can make a case this is actually the best roster in the National Football League. This defensive line made improvements that I just think are going a little bit unnoticed with additions like Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson and even recently Shelby Harris. This team was trotting out really practice squad caliber players across the board opposite of Myles Garrett last year, and that's going to be different. And I don't even think Deshaun Watson has to be his old self. I think he just has to be the 15th best quarterback in the NFL, and this is going to be a damn good football team. It never feels great with the Deshaun Watson situation to say the Browns are going to have a good season, but it's going to be really difficult for this to not be a good football team. So I've got them 10-7. Then the Baltimore Ravens also at 10-7. Not a ton of question marks with this team. Just really excited to see what this offense looks like with Lamar. But I do think that the front four, the pass rush, those guys are going to have to really step up in a big way this year if they're going to try and win this division. Because I've got the Bengals actually at 13-4, having a massive season here. Going through that Bengals deep dive, I was reminded how deep that team is, how versatile they are, how good they are across the board, how well coached they are. I really like the Bengals. They're going to finish 13-4 in the AFC, and that is, spoiler alert, that's going to be good enough for the 1 seed in the AFC. Then the AFC East, Miami Dolphins, 8-9. This really just comes down to, if you put a gun to my head and said, does Tua get through the year healthy? I'm not comfortable betting on that. If he does, this team has a chance to win this division and shatter my 8-9 predictions. But I'm just not comfortable enough to do that. It really comes down to that. This team has a much higher ceiling than 8-9. The Jalen Ramsey injury is a really big deal too for that defense. But then I've actually got the Buffalo Bills at 9-8. I hinted at this in my first Hot Routes debut show with Matthew Collar, where we did some hot takes. I I've got the Buffalo Bills missing the playoffs, and it's going to be close here. They're going to be right on the fringe at 9-8, but I just think this team has way too many question marks. I'm not a big Sean McDermott guy. He's taken over the defense there. Von Miller, I think it's incredibly optimistic to expect that they really get all that much from him at 35 years old, starting the season on the PUP list, coming off his second career ACL injury. This defense doesn't scare me, and I think they're going to have some inconsistencies offensively as well with their O-line, and the AFC is just really tough. Another team, you put them in a different division in the NFC, they're borderline world beater, but I just don't have a great feeling about Buffalo this year. Then I actually have New England at 9-8. As I was clicking through the schedule, their schedule felt noticeably easier relative to the other teams in this division. I actually had them starting really hot. We'll see how that plays out. I love this defense. I'm obsessed with this defense, the different versatile ways that they can beat you. And this offense should be significantly better than last year, going from the worst. Well, there were some bad offensive coordinators last year, but I think New England was probably the worst. And just getting average NFL coaching, if not good NFL coaching with Bill O'Brien. Then the New York Jets. I really am a believer in the New York Jets. I think this defense is obviously poised for success, but the jump in offense that this team is going to see getting Aaron Rodgers is going to be substantial. He doesn't have to play like an MVP, though I think he's capable of it still. I am buying the Jets hype train. Then in the AFC South, I have the Houston Texans finishing with a 5-12 season, a team that's still putting a lot of things together. I think we see a lot of learning curves from CJ Stroud and a defense that should be pretty solid, but just needs more players. So 5-12 for the Texans. The Colts, fairly similarly, 6-11. I like a lot of the pieces that this team has. I think Anthony Richardson has some really exciting moments and some really frustrating moments as well. Two teams there that I think are just another year away, but I do believe in their future with their new coaches and new quarterbacks. Tennessee actually finishing 9-8 here. I've been kind of pounding the table that people are too low on the Titans since February, and that's going to be backed up here. This team just has such a high floor with their coaching, with their defense, with their culture and physicality. But even then, their offensive line isn't great, but I think their problems there are a little bit overstated. The DeAndre Hopkins addition is huge to just give them something in the passing game there. I think Treylon Burks as a third piece, a second piece now with Chigo Okonkwo. I think their weapons are in a much better spot than people realize. This team had a nightmare season last year and still finished, 8-9? I think the Titans are kind of this year's surprise AFC playoff team in a lot of ways, especially being a wild card, which they're going to get the tiebreakers here in this scenario. Spoiler alert. But the Jacksonville Jaguars do ultimately win this division. That offense is the best unit in this division. It's one of the best offenses in the NFL. I do have questions about their defense, but I don't think it's enough to hold them back from an 11-win season in the AFC South. And with that record, by the way, I do think Trevor Lawrence will be an MVP candidate this season. Then in the AFC West, I do have the Raiders finishing last place. That's not uncommon. So many holes still on this roster, but I do think the offense is going to have some nice weeks as long as Jimmy is out there, and it's going to allow them to basically, scrap out a few tough wins throughout the year. Then the Denver Broncos at 7-10. I'm kind of a believer in the Sean Payton thing, but I'm also hesitant after what we saw from Russ last year. Really difficult team to predict. I also think this defense has a few more holes than I'm comfortable with inside the structure of the AFC. So, a 7-10 record is no small feat in this conference, but obviously Broncos fans will want a little bit more than that. Then the Chargers at 9-8. I think this offense is going to be humming, and even if the Chargers miss the playoffs here due to wild card tiebreakers, I think Justin Herbert could be an MVP candidate this year, but the combination of a lack of really any run game at all and a defense that I just don't trust, not to mention just the Chargers are going to charger. It feels that way every year. I'm going to bet slightly against them there, but still kind of hedging it with a solid 9-8 season. And if tiebreakers went a different way, they would be in the playoffs. But then the Kansas City Chiefs winning the AFC West. Very little analysis needed there. We just did their deep dive. Yesterday, they came in number 1 in my power rankings. So your AFC playoff picture, we've already hinted at some of this, but I have the Titans squeezing out that 7 seed, the Browns with the 6 seed, the Ravens with the 5 seed, and then your division winners listed there. So I'm going to do my awards show next because the NFL doesn't consider playoffs for the awards, and then we'll do playoff predictions. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about tonight's Thursday night game too on the way out, because my weekly picks video is going to be coming out tomorrow. But for the awards, starting with MVP, I've got Patrick Mahomes winning MVP. Tough to bet against him. I think when the season comes to a close, they're still going to look at this and say the defense was pretty solid, but he had another remarkable season. The Chiefs won their division, and he did it throwing to guys like Sky Moore and Marquez Valdes-Scantling as his wide receivers. Granted, he has Travis Kelce, but it didn't stop him from winning it last year. It's just tough to pick against Patrick Mahomes there. Offensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson. I think the narrative helps him, the jump he's going to take from year 1 to year 2. Not that he was close to bad last year, but I really think Garrett Wilson is going to just be the feature of the Jets offense in a very similar way to what Davante Adams was for Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to feed him touchdowns. I think Garrett Wilson's going to be a league winner in people's fantasy leagues and is going to get a ton of votes for Offensive Player of the Year. From the same voters that picked him for Offensive Rookie of the Year, by the way, in what was a tight race between him and some other good candidates. I think that matters. Defensive Player of the Year, going Myles Garrett this year. This one I got right last year, by the way. I had Nick Bosa, pounded the table for him as quietly one of the 2 or 3 best edge rushers in the NFL, when last year he wasn't quite viewed in that spectrum. Just got $34 million payday. So this year, I'm going Myles Garrett. With things opened up a little bit around him, I think a slight reduction in the amount of double teams that he faces, but also just more opportunities, more easy cleanup sacks. I think we could get a 90-plus pressure, 20-sack season from Myles Garrett for that Browns defense. Then Offensive Rookie of the Year, didn't even have to think about it, Bijan Robinson. I considered Bijan for Offensive Player of the Year because I had the Falcons in the playoffs. I've said this before, but I think there's a better chance that Bijan rushes for 2,000 yards in that Falcons offense than he does for 1,000 in that Falcons offense. He is going to be a machine. They spent that 8th overall pick on him. They're going to use him in the receiving game as well. I can't wait to watch Bijan, who is to date the highest graded prospect I've ever had. Then Defensive Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson. Just going to go chalk there. I tried to get creative, thought about guys like Jack Campbell, some of these cornerbacks with playmaking opportunities like Emmanuel Forbes, even a guy like Cam Smith in Miami I thought about. Joey Porter, who for some reason isn't listed as a starter right now for the Steelers. I thought about some of those options, but I'm going to go with Will Anderson. I think he's going to work really well inside that scheme for DeMeco Ryans. And, I think a 10-11 sack season is very much in play for him, and that should be enough to win it this year. Coach of the Year, I'm going to give it to Robert Saleh. I actually struggled with this one. I kind of deferred to my playoff or my season predictions for this one because record has a huge weight in who wins this. I thought about Mike Vrabel as well, but I think the narrative is going to lean slightly in Robert Saleh's favor, especially because I think that Jets defense is going to do a lot of damage for the Jets this year. And then Comeback Player of the Year, you know what it is. It's Damar Hamlin. I think he won the award the second he took the field in a preseason game. Just trot him out there with the medical staff that saved his life. It's an incredible story. This is a narrative-based award, and there's very few narratives as amazing as Damar Hamlin's survival, really. So we're going to go with Hamlin there, who I think will be an adequate backup as a safety for the Bills. I don't think on the field he's going to change their season or anything like that, but good for Damar. And it's playoff time. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because, we're getting to the point where the odds of these being the specific matchups in the playoffs are so slim at this point in time, but I'll just kind of let you look at this and see who I have beating who. I do have for the conference championships, I have the Jets getting through to play the Bengals in Cincinnati. And then in the NFC, I have the Cowboys visiting the 49ers. For my Super Bowl prediction, I am going to go with the Bengals edging out the 49ers because this is my Super Bowl matchup. I'll break it down a little bit. I do think the Bengals have a really good combination of linebackers to slow down some of the rack bros there in San Francisco with Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. I think Dax Hill as well is going to prove to be a weapon for this defense come Super Bowl time in terms of his pursuit speed and tackling as well. So I think they can neutralize this Niners offense a little bit, and then I think the Bengals offense is well equipped to handle really any defense, but can match the 49ers defense in this matchup. So I'm going to go 23-20. Joe Burrow finally seals the deal after getting close the last couple of years, and Kyle Shanahan yet again falls short. But as I mentioned, I do want to just sneak in my Thursday night opener pick here tonight. I'm not going to have time to get my first weekly picks video up here before the first game of the season. It'll be out tomorrow here on YouTube. But I just want this down for the record here. I'm going to take the Chiefs, and I'm going to take them on the spread as a play this week. It has dropped from 6.5 to 5 with news that Chris Jones isn't going to go, and looks like Kelsey is going to be questionable. Ultimately, with or without Kelsey, I think Mahomes can handle this Lions defense. I am not afraid of Detroit's pass rush getting to Mahomes. I think that's really how you beat him. And I'm definitely not thinking these Detroit corners are going to match up all that well and take advantage of what's going to be a matchup problem for the Chiefs in a lot of games, is that cornerback wide receiver matchup. I just don't love Detroit's corners. So I think the Chiefs offense has plenty of success. I think they're going to be roaring. Home opener has favored well for the defending Super Bowl champs. Obviously in Arrowhead, it's going to be a lot of pressure on Jared Goff, who really just has Amon-Ra St. Brown and nobody else. No Jamison Williams in this game. I think they're going to try Jahmyr Gibbs, but Kansas City has excellent linebackers to handle that type of athleticism as that kind of chess piece out of the backfield. So despite the injuries, I think the Chiefs prove yet again just how great Patrick Mahomes is, why they're still 5-point favorites against a hyped-up Lions team, and I think they win this game 28-21, cover the spread, and get their season off to a good start. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Let me know your playoff predictions in the comments down below. Really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of my NFL content this season. Please drop a like on the way out, and good luck to your NFL teams this season. Peace out.